welcome to the Upshot, a podcast for dads who try. For dads who are thinking about their legacy and don't want to miss out on all that fatherhood has to offer. I'm Kyle. I'll be joined by my good friend Shane, and we're excited to jump into today's conversation.
Hi. How are you, Kyle?
Great.
It's good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
How have you been?
It's been good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I won't go into all of the boring stuff of a unemployed guy right now, but
Inspires our
I'm still calling
listeners.
I'm still calling it fun employment. So
Does your wife call
We'll
it fun
see.
employment?
I don't know.
Pretty sure that
I'm not going to speak for her.
really quickly.
So yeah, no, things are great.
Good.
Things are good. Girls are good. Life is. I'm happy.
Yeah.
It's great, man. This is a highlight of my month here, right here, though, and I'm excited about our topic today. To talk to you about.
It's a pretty sad month you live.
No, man. Like, I enjoy these things. So we're going to talk about rites of passage today, and I know that you have some insight into that and some energy and passion behind it, and I'm excited to hear about it a little bit more. And we have a guest today.
We do have a guest today. A lot of people confuse the two of us.
Yep.
A lot of people think we're twins.
Yeah, I like the movie.
Yeah, that's right. Brothers from the same mother. Actually, this is my friend Adam Ulatoski.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you, man?
I'm good.
I was trying to think when Kyle said I had to introduce you. When and where did we meet? I know you got to think real hard at 7 a.m.
Well, you should know this too.
No, I have a terrible memory. This is why I asked you.
That's a great question. I think we met actually through James.
Oh, yeah, because you were in James's
I was in James's
group.
LDG group.
Yeah.
And then he introduced me to the RMDK group.
Yeah.
And I think that's at least where we've probably had met briefly or something at church before then, but I think that's when we actually got to know each other.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
We're going to go with that.
Yeah. One thing I really like about Adam, just sitting across from him, and we've gone out for coffee quite a bit. We've ridden in a canoe together. We've done a lot of things together in the short little bit of time we've spent together. But Adam just seems to be this guy that is in trying to figure out what it looks like to intentionally follow Jesus. And he's been inviting other men into that process. And he's either not afraid to say yes to uncomfortable things, or he doesn't know how to say no yet. I'm not sure which one it is.
Probably a little both.
A little of both?
Yeah.
But
Usually I say yes, and then I think, oh, no, what do
Yeah.
I do?
that's how I live, too.
That'll be fun. No.
Oh man, yeah.
And so I think as Adam's been on this journey of discovering what it looks like to follow Jesus, I think he's had an impact on my own journey as I try to figure out how to follow Jesus. You know, you are who you surround yourself with, and when I grew up, I want to be like Adam. Maybe not physically.
Surround myself with people like you. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Adam, you want to tell us a little bit about your family, or?
Yeah. So I've got two boys, Evan and Daniel, 7 and 9. They're
Nice.
about 18 months apart. Met my wife in college. I like to say that I was a freshman and she was a senior, but in reality, I was a redshirt freshman football player, but I was a junior academically, so not that far apart.
Yeah.
And we got married right when I was out of college. She had been out for about a year or so. And it's been 2010, so about 13 years.
Nice.
A little over 13
Nice.
years.
What's a fun Adam fact?
Ooh. I don't know. You're supposed to do these.
Maybe Shane, you should tell us about.
I was not in the show doc.
Well, Adam, you were a starting offensive lineman for the University of Texas, right? Back in the days when they knew how to play football.
Yeah, we were pretty good. I was there from 05 to 09, so 05 was my redshirt year when we went to and won the national championship against USC. And my senior year was when we played Alabama in the national championship, and Colt got hurt, and everybody knows that story, so we won't revisit that. But,
Yeah. Do you have like a national championship ring?
I do. They actually give you 2.
Why?
Well, because the bowl game gives you one, and then we were also Big 12 champions, so you got one from there, but they kind of turned that into a national championship ring too.
What do you do with these rings?
You hide them in a safe and never wear them.
Never do anything with them?
No.
You should have worn them today.
You should have let me wear them today.
You could do curls. They're pretty. I'm not that showy, I guess. I don't know. They're massive and ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Which is why you should have worn them
right.
today.
And then you knew.
Someday,
and then you'd know what to
you
do
need
with your hands during the podcast. You just hold them up like this the whole
Yeah.
time.
One of these days, he's going to bring them out of the vault, and everyone's going to be like, "What
Yeah.
is Adam wearing?"
I mean, I don't know. Like,
yeah,
Yeah, they're not rings.
like an Apple Watch on your finger.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
glad to have
So,
you.
it's the timeliness of having you on here is pretty cool because you guys just got back from a canoe trip.
Yep.
We did.
Over the weekend.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that, but before, we should circle back around and do our dad moments. So if you have a dad moment, Shane, from the last month or whatever, share a story with us.
Well, since Adam's visiting today, what are dad moments? Like, why are we doing this?
Dad moment, simple way for us to share a little bit about what's going on in our lives. Could be funny, can be just insight into what does it look like for us as fathers.
Yeah.
Usually it's a way to poke fun at ourselves a little bit, but lessons learned, fun stories to share about things we're learning with our kids, can be recent and or applicable to what we're going to talk about today, or just random and fun.
Yeah.
Either way.
I've got two small dad moments.
Okay.
One I should probably give my wife full credit for. It's probably a mom moment. So I came home a week ago from work, and the yard was mowed. And as you guys know, I have a little bit of property, so it takes a little while to mow our property.
Yeah.
Well, guess who mowed the yard?
Elena.
I know the
Lander.
Nice.
And Lander is 9 years old. Like, this lawnmower is probably 4 times as big as he is.
Push mower.
Push mower.
Riding mower.
Push mower. But
Wow.
here's this little guy.
That's a big property to
Yes,
push mow.
he mowed probably a whole acre all by himself. Wow. So here's this little guy, arms in the air, just like me when I'm behind the mower, pushing this mower.
So
it was fun.
What did he say afterwards?
I-
What was the read on him?
It's funny when you give your boys permission to do something that they don't think they're big enough to do yet. It's like the greatest moment in the world.
Yeah.
Now give him 3 mows and he's gonna
be like over it.
It's gonna lose its appeal.
Mm-hmm.
But at that moment, he was thrilled that
Pretty-
we thought he was mature enough,
Responsible
big enough
enough.
to handle mowing the property. The scary moment was he almost mowed right over a coral snake. He came running into the house. Mom, I almost ran over a coral snake. So that was one of my.
Did y'all find the coral snake?
No, we didn't. But we find them all over our property, which is great when you have lots of kids and animals. The other dad moment, one thing that is important
cool.
to me and my wife is we wanted to develop in our children a passion for reading. And we think it takes more than just sticking books in front of their faces and saying, read these. So when they're young, we read books with them together quite frequently. There are seasons when this gets trickier than others. And so I just started the last battle with Kaylee and Lander. So we've been going through the Chronicles of Narnia, and this is the last book. So there is that moment that me, Kaylee, and Lander were sitting on the couch, and we opened it together knowing that we spent lots of nights reading these books. And some of them they love them. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a great book to read to your kids. Some of them, they lose their
interest
kind of halfway through it, and I have to like, hey, come sit down. We're gonna do this together. We do hard things. What we've learned from the Watson family, and it was just a moment to recognize like we're almost through this.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they were really excited about the first 3 books because the first 3 books come with a movie. After you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we get to watch the movie together.
Yeah.
So, and the book that we're going to read together once we're done with the last bottles, we jump into The Hobbit. And so Lander is really excited about The Hobbit.
Good luck. I tried reading The Hobbit and gave up.
I think we had to
Couple
do that
pages
in high
in.
school. Is
As
read
an
The Hobbit or
adult.
something.
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. Couldn't do it.
Well, it's a book written to children.
It just
don't believe so.
was boring.
The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings is very descriptive, and
I'm talking about The Hobbit.
The
I
Hobbit
couldn't get it. I
is
couldn't
part
do
of the
it.
Lord of the Rings, right?
well, it's like the
It's like
prequel.
a setup, right? Yeah.
Prequel.
Right. It's part
call
of
it?
the story.
It's a different storyline altogether. I mean, sure, it comes before Lord of the Rings, and it is written differently than the rest of the books. It's easier to digest. It's not as descriptive.
Obviously, I read the Spark Notes when I had to do that in
Yep.
high school.
What did you call them?
Spark Notes. It was Cliff Notes, but we had the internet when I was in high school, so it was the internet version.
I love how you like make eye contact with me
Yes.
when you say that. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
So glad you're here. Who invited you? Is that me or?
I don't know.
All right.
I just showed up.
Yeah, it's my twin.
Yeah. That's funny. You talked about Lander mowing the yard. We have a similar thing going on. It's not nearly to that effect, but Lucy, the 2-year-old, one of the highlights of my morning is like, hey, Lucy, will you feed the dog? And she loves to run over there and grab. It's just a scoop into the dog bowl, push it out in front of Frank, and then she gets a little tiny Halloween candy.
Yeah. So, is
she's
she
doing it.
inspired by the candy?
The candy's a recent thing.
Okay.
It's really more to promote, like, it's more for Maggie. Like, hey, if you do something kind, you can have, because she wants this Halloween. Jess loves Halloween. Our house has been decorated for Halloween for 6 weeks already.
No.
Goodness.
I'm not kidding. Like September, like Labor Day. So maybe not 6 weeks, but Labor Day, like, we're decorating for Halloween. I'm like, okay.
That's crazy.
So I got like spider webs all over me. Like it's on the door, but
Yeah.
it gets messy. And every time I walk in and out of the house, I'm like, spider web all over me. Anyway, so she puts out these candy corns on the kitchen island.
Yeah.
In the middle of the kids. So it's could be a free for all,
Yeah.
but she's got some rules around it, and it's like they have to ask or do something kind. They can have a candy corn, and so mostly that's for Maggie. But when Maggie does something, then Lucy's like, I want to do it. So the easiest thing for her is like, hey,
That's
go
fun.
feed the dog.
Yeah.
And so it's fun. But speaking of Lucy, it's not really a dad moment. I think this is more of like an initiation for me as a father. Our kids have been sick plenty over the years. But last night, Lucy's had like a cold for the last week, and I'm keeping an eye on her, and I'm worried. I'm like, is she going to get ear infection? No fever, but she's just not herself, and her nose is just constantly running, and she's, we caught her on top of her changing table yesterday, like, and she's just trying to get wipes to like blow her nose by herself but everything's destroyed because she's, whatever. So last night she starts crying about 10:30. Crying again at 2. I wake up. She's in the bed with us because Jess is trying to sleep. And then about 4 o'clock this morning, I wake up and there's puking happening,
In the bed?
in the bed with us. And so it was like, okay, this is fun. So we've been up since 4 today, like having fun,
Like
watching
this-
Paw Patrol.
this morning?
This morning, today. Oh yeah. This is my 3rd cup of coffee.
It's
Ready to
funny
go.
you say that because I saw you I think you liked one of my Facebook posts and it was like 4 a.m.
Dude.
And I'm like, what is going on in the Watson home at 4 a.m. that he's scrolling through social
Yeah,
media?
I tried not to. Like, it was just like I have to get rid of my notifications really quick. So if there's like the red dot on Facebook,
Yeah.
then I just open it, check it,
Oh, you're one of those
close
guys.
it. But
No red
something
dots.
you posted, I don't remember. It was
our canoe trip.
It was the canoe trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I had to okay, I'm gonna put this away. I need to go do something more productive with my mind right now. But
At 4 in the morning.
yeah, so I don't know if that counts as a dad moment, but that's my real life today.
It's not a moment. It's just reality.
That's just reality.
Puke in the bed.
I don't know what I'm still
Gosh,
learning
this is
lessons from
terrible.
that, but
Terrible. What about our guest, Adam? Do you got a dad moment? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it qualifies as a dad moment, but I was just thinking about when Evan was younger. I think most people have this, where the kids just constantly get out of bed when it's time to go to bed, and they find new excuses and all that. So
Never. I
Stalling,
never experienced
yeah.
that.
And so, he kept on getting out of bed. I need water. I'm hungry. I need a hug. I need all this thing. And so I walk him back to his room. I was like, if your feet hit the ground one more time before it's morning, unless you're going to the bathroom, there's going to be consequences. You need to stay in your bed. And so then I walk back, and then like a minute later, he's yelling. He's like, Dad, Dad. And I walk on there, and he's got his feet. He's like, this top half of his body is on the bed, and the other half is just waving right above the ground, going, Dad, I'm thirsty. And I'm just like, all right, so choose your words more carefully.
That's right.
That's what I learned. So, yeah,
And your kid got your mother's intelligence.
it's fair.
Figured it out.
He's very black and white, and that should have been a sign things to come in black and white. I am following the rules.
What my dad told me.
Yes, you are.
Kids are very resourceful.
Yeah, they are.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I was imagining him like throwing a pillow or something onto the floor.
Yes,
like
I was
all,
imagining climbing
floor
on
is lava.
bookshelves.
Yeah.
Floor is lava. Who came up with that idea? Floor is lava. Probably a father trying to keep his kid in bed is where that came from.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Well, such inspiring moments this month.
that's cool. So we've alluded to, you guys went on the canoe trip.
Yeah.
This weekend. I want, you told me about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. You guys were working on this trip, and I was so curious to learn more about not just the trip. So I want to hear about how the trip went, why you went on the trip, but like really the purpose behind. There's a group of guys who you do these things with, both of you, and would love to hear. So we'll just want to hear more about and unpack the purpose of that group. And, I think it's related to rites of passage, but I want to hear more. And so let's just jump in with like, you went on a canoe trip. How did it go? Why did you go?
Adam, how did our canoe trip go?
We made it.
We did make it.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. We had some adventures. I gave Shane some new experiences that he had never had before.
You did.
Because I'm a giver.
Yes. Not
So,
the kind of giving I was hoping for.
Well, so Shane, if you can't tell if you're watching this, is
twins.
A little bit smaller than I am. And so we started off, we were in the same canoe, and we had my pack in front of me and his pack in front of him. And if a canoe could do a wheelie, that's kind of what it was like.
My paddle couldn't quite reach the water every time I tried.
Couldn't see the water over the.
That's right.
So we would be going, and it would start to get shallow, and Shane would be like, "I think we're good."
It's the very back of the canoe.
He would make it.
He's
and
good.
Then, he's fine. And so then we adjusted. We adjusted the weight, and eventually we figured that out.
Until we got to the tree.
Well, then there was this time. Why don't you tell it?
No, I would much prefer to hear it from you.
All right. So, here's my perspective. Where he's like, all right, we need to go right and bank left hard and then bank right hard again. And so we're going and we do that. And then we bank right, we bank left. And then there's a tree in front of us. And Shane is like, all right, bank right. I'm like, I'm banking. And he's sitting there, like, not doing anything because he's like, I can't, because if he does it, then we just speed up. And so I'm trying to turn, and you're like, well, here's a tree. Turn right. I can't. I'm trying. And then we end up hitting the tree. And then it was just this slow
shameful,
motion.
Embarrassing.
It's like, so we hit the tree. Some water gets in, some more water gets in, some more water gets in. It is like
the role of patheticness.
And then it was just like,
we're going.
We're gone.
It's like, we didn't even fall in. It was more of just like we got out sideways. It was
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
All of our stuff's in the canoe.
Yeah. So.
Well, it's the Brazos, right? So it's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
It was up to Adam's ankle. I was up to my neck.
Yeah.
There's
no piranhas in this water.
No alligators.
Maybe some gar.
Not that part of the Brazos.
Any gar?
No,
Not
there
in
were
this section.
hardly any fish
Leeches?
in this section.
I don't know. The water's flowing pretty well.
Checked myself, but I don't think so.
No, I mean, the only thing we really discovered or experienced was shame. It was a good shame.
Good bit of shame. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. What's funny is it's flowing.
Our pride flew down
Yes,
the river,
it did.
but
our pride was gone, 100%. And the water was flowing quite a bit here. So when the canoe slowly tips over, Adam and I are grabbing all of our stuff, throwing on our packs, watching water bottles flow down
you
the
had
river.
you had wet gear.
Yeah, we had bagged everything.
we packed well. Yeah. So
you prepared.
We did.
For this moment, for this very moment.
This moment.
Yes.
And then have you ever experienced when you've got a canoe full of water, what do you do? Because it weighs like 3,000 pounds.
No, I have not.
And so there's a technique that
You
Adam
can't-
and I took a little while to figure out.
Well, we knew what to do. It was the actual doing it that was the hard part.
Yeah, because our hands are all filled with stuff.
I'm have all this, and then I'm trying to lift this up with one hand, which doesn't work well.
And I'm just thinking we got to get this canoe out of the water as fast as we can before any of our teammates come around the corner and see our moment of shame.
Which we did not. kids, they all got a good look at it.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but
Photos,
what we
videos.
ended up
For sure.
doing-
Instead of coming towards us to help, they all pull out their cameras.
Right.
Because these are
Actually,
good.
There's
quality
time for that
cameras.
later. You guys are
Yes,
safe.
yeah.
There was somebody not in our group who was there, and he started coming towards us. And
I
she
thought he
like-
was coming to
yeah,
help.
She was like, he was coming to help, and he just slowly went by, and, like
Just
stared at us.
floated right
Just
by.
be like,
Like, you guys are stupid.
how you doing?
Yeah.
Better than us, I bet.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh.
Thanks for the help.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but we finally got the canoe out.
We did, yeah. It actually, once we put the stuff down, it wasn't too bad. But
Yeah.
So if you're ever on a canoe trip, don't try to lift the canoe and hold on to your gear at the same time.
Just choose one or the other.
And don't try to lift the canoe out of the water with water in it. But how do you get water out of the canoe if the canoe's in the water?
Is it a slow tip?
Nope.
No. Here we're gonna educate our listeners. So you keep the canoe fully upside down in the water, and you lift it straight up.
Okay. And
So
you just
all the
gotta
water
break the
just comes
vacuum.
out. Yeah, break the vacuum. Let all the water, and then you flip it.
Bec-
But if you try to lift it at all with any water in it, you're not going to get that canoe out of the
Yeah.
water.
It's good. I'm going canoeing this weekend, so
Yeah. there you
hopefully
go.
it
But
doesn't
aren't you
happen. But
building your own canoe?
well, there may be some of that. Yeah.
You and your adventure race.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but we had after
Nebraska's.
that, I think we got better.
Yeah, we did. We did.
We
Lesson learned.
We did.
Good.
Yeah.
We became professional
So
canoers.
why were y'all canoeing?
We're part of this group of fathers and sons. I don't know what we would call this group. Raising a Modern Day Knight group.
I mean, it was based off that book.
Yeah, there's
so-
this book that Robert Lewis wrote called Raising a Modern Day Knight, and the whole premise behind this book was this idea that boys today may not have a clear definition of what it looks to be a man.
Yeah.
Nor do they know when do they actually make this transition into manhood.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we were to just ask the question, what is it that makes a boy a man? Is it when he gets his driver's license, when he's old enough to drink, old enough to vote, gets his first job, gets married, leaves college? Like, what is the indicator that tells a boy you have transitioned into manhood? And so this book, Raising a Modern Day Knight, uses this example of a boy on his journey to knighthood.
Yeah.
Kind of knew where he was on his journey because he had other men, knights around him that was part of his training process.
Yeah.
And he went through certain rites of passage from page or from squire to page to knight errant to knight, and he knew where he was on this journey to becoming a knight. And so we've developed or put together this group of men and boys to help these boys have a clear understanding of what it looks like to be a man.
Yeah.
We want to not only teach them, but we want to show them. We also use this group as a place to show these boys that we are for them, support them, and then one thing we do in this group is we go on these trips, or what we call rites of passage, when boys are transitioning between stages. So this canoe trip was for a group of boys that were, you could kind of say, going through puberty, like they're 13.
13, 12.
Ish.
I think their ranges was 12 to almost 14.
Yeah, and so we know that this is like a transition stage.
Yeah.
And we want to recognize with these boys that they're going through this stage. And so we have these rites of passage where we give them something memorable, whether it's a tipped canoe or like we want them to do hard things on these trips.
Yep.
We usually have a theme. The theme for this trip was, what does it look like to accept responsibility? Because part of our definition of manhood is this idea or this principle of, hey, men accept responsibility. Well, what does that look like? So on this canoe trip, we would take moments where Dad would share a story, do an activity that was around this theme of accepting responsibility as boys moving into manhood.
Yeah.
It's really quick.
You want to add anything
No,
to it?
I mean, the only thing I would add is it's the way that I ultimately ended up coming into this group was I kind of came back to faith a little bit later in life. And I wanted to raise my kids in a biblical manner, but I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
It was like, and so ultimately I was in this group with James. James was talking about this. I started asking questions and all that, and then that's kind of how I ended up in that group. But I think a lot of it is making sure that that is front and center of everything that we're doing as well. So it's kind of what we have come up with as a biblical definition of manhood, because I think that's probably very different than if you asked
10 guys off the street.
Popular
Yeah, you get 10
culture,
answers.
what that would be, I would imagine, is very different. And so, it's accept responsibility, reject passivity, lead courageously, and expect God's greater reward. And so those are kind of like the 4
Pillars,
Yeah.
characteristics of manhood.
Yeah. So, because ultimately everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some guys might not get married, and so it can't be when you get married, right? I mean, so it's. I think that's just an important part of it as well.
Yeah, and our boys are going to grow up discovering a definition of manhood, and we have the opportunity to influence that definition, because if we don't, they'll put one together on their own.
Yeah. Totally. And we've talked about this a little bit on the show, like, other episodes of, like, even as father, like, what is the point? Like, what are we trying to accomplish here for men? What is the, we all see all of the memes and the viral GIFs of, and you have all the pop culture of, like, a little bit. I don't archive my own or anything, but yeah, I can appreciate it. But even like, I'm thinking of like shows like King of the Hill. You just have the guys in the. Yep. To be a man is to drink beer with your buddies in the alley and almost avoid all the other responsibilities. And to allow to, like, check as little boxes as possible so that you can just, like, try to enjoy as much of life as possible. So I love hearing your definition from the group.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. Not only, like, it's cool to hear that that's what you're trying to lead your sons in. Like, that's incredible. But I think it's, like, that's inspiring and should be encouraging to just the men who are listening to the show. That's something we don't need to forget, even at this stage of life. So I think it speaks to a lot of men right now as they're just wondering, like, what am I doing?
And the only other thing I would say is, to that point, it's hard to do that on your own. And when you have other dads there supporting you and maybe filling in some gaps that you have, it's really hard to remember everything that you need to talk about. And so when there's somebody else who can bring in a different perspective, if you've ever tried to coach your own kid playing a sport, they don't listen to you nearly as well as they listen to somebody else who's coaching them. So there's sometimes that aspect of it. It takes a community, and I think that when you have that community with the same intentions working together, there to support you, not to supplant you or anything like that, but I think there's a big aspect of that as well.
Yeah, and it's powerful, because one of the things that I appreciate about these trips is, Adam's been in this group for a couple of years now. 2.5, 3 years. Now, Adam has younger boys who have not gone through one of these stages. Mm-hmm. So Adam is there without his sons, communicating not only to these other dads, but these 13-year-old boys, that this is important enough for me to not only stand with your father, but to stand with you. And one thing we want these boys to know is that they're surrounded by a group of men that are for their journey into manhood. And you can't just trust your father, but you can trust these other men when this journey gets difficult. I have 2 boys that I would consider adults. They may not look like adults physically, but they're they're 21 and 19. But they went through this group, and looking back, one of these other dads took one of my boys through a discipleship program. These boys have men that I know they've had conversations with when they've gone through challenges in their life that either they weren't comfortable talking to me about, or they just needed somebody else's opinion. And the great thing is I knew that these were men that I could trust my boys with. And you just don't, I can't bestow trust in my son towards another man. I can't say, hey, Caleb, meet my friend Adam. You can trust him. Go have a tough conversation with him. The one thing he needs to do with Adam is he needs to spend a lot of time with
Build
Adam.
his own trust with him.
Yeah, he needs to do shoulder-to-shoulder activities with Adam.
Yeah.
He needs to spend some time in a canoe with Adam where they have conversations sitting around a fire, doing things where he can start to see the kind of man that Adam is, and he can build a case that says Adam is trustworthy.
Yeah.
You can go to Adam. And that's one of the most powerful things about this group, because on this canoe trip, technically we only had 4 boys, but we had 7 dads.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that these 7 dads are there for these 4 boys, that's significant.
Yeah.
And this is a significant transition that these boys are going on as they move into their teenage years.
That's awesome.
And so just having Adam walk this journey with my boys and these other dads, it's powerful. And I know it's giving a message to my boys that this manhood thing is important. And we're here to help you figure it out.
It's good.
Yeah,
It's
it's
really
fun.
good.
Like when new dads join with their new boys, we have we go through like this
An
initiation process, which I think is powerful. Like it's really like these boys are like, I get to be a part of something significant.
Yeah.
And there's like, I'm one of the boys,
Yeah.
and we have this. I don't know how you describe it. You want to give it a try?
I'll give it a try. So, my experience, because I don't know how exactly y'all did it for everybody, but we were out camping at a campsite, and so we had our campsite, and the fire was going, and then we brought them, I don't know, 50 yards away.
Yeah, it
maybe,
depends on
something
how
like
old
that.
the kid
Yeah.
is.
And we had them close their eyes, and then we had the rest of the group surrounding them, like kind of talking at them and being these distractions and voices, and they had to close their eyes, and the dad would have to use their voice to lead them over to the fire. And it was like, the whole point is, there's going to be a lot of distractions, there's going to be a lot of things out there. Listen to your dad's voice. He will lead you to where you need to go. And so you do that, and then we get to the fire, and then they're usually, mine were 6 and 7-ish range, and so they're light enough so we bring them over the fire.
2 dads will carry the boy
over the fire, and that was their kind of initiation.
Did they know they're going over the fire?
I don't know if your boys did.
Or they're still blindfolded at the time?
Oh, yeah,
after
at that point
That
they
point, they're fine. Yeah, they take that off once they get to the fire.
Yeah.
And then, so yes, they know they're going over the fire when we do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they knew ahead of time.
Before time, yeah.
And then they just this moment where the other boys are like,
and then they all
officially
celebrate with
welcoming
them.
them in, like
Yeah.
you're part of our
Yeah.
group, you're part of this clan or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And when for older boys, we blindfold them, we disorient them a little bit, we spin them around a few times.
Yeah.
And the other boys, like Adam was saying, are the voices that are trying to distract them. Adam will be calling his sons towards him, and then the other dads are trying to like whisper or say, hey, listen for your dad's voice.
Right.
It's this
Remind
way.
him. Yeah.
And there's a message behind this, right? Like there are a lot of distractions, and your dad's is the voice that we want you to listen to, but you've got a group of men that are also helping point you in the right direction. Yeah. I think it's a powerful little moment.
Yeah, it was cool. They were excited. Of course, they made it a competition who would get there first.
Oh,
Yeah.
Boys.
So, okay, there's a lot here that I'm curious about, but
Sure.
You mentioned already you have two sons already been through this. You would call them adults now. Have they reflected with you openly about like what has this experience had on them? Have they talked about the value of it or memories around it, or is what are their feelings about it as they look backwards? If you had to summarize that.
When I think about Caleb, I know the times that Caleb got to spend with that other dad who led him through this discipleship journey was very meaningful to him. Because Caleb was at a stage where he's like, hey, I've seen what my church has to offer. Dad, I've heard your messages, but I kind of want to explore a little bit more. And he's like, I trust this other dad. And so I allowed this dad to disciple my son, knowing that hopefully our messaging would be kind of aligned.
Yeah.
But in Caleb's eyes, it was powerful. It's like my dad gave me permission.
Yeah.
At a younger
Trusted
age,
me.
Yeah.
Yep.
To go have conversations around what does it mean to follow Christ with this dad. And Caleb has told me those were very meaningful conversations that he had with this other dad. And my boys definitely remember those rites of passage that signified to them, you are on your journey to manhood. And there are moments that we try to create on each one of these journeys that are powerful, that they will then reflect on. On the canoe trip, we have this claymore sword, which is always pretty funny because we go on these trips, and I always wonder what other people are thinking. So we're loading up our canoes, and somebody pulls out the Braveheart sword and puts it in the bottom of one of the canoes, and you can see people around us like, who are these
Some
guys?
role playing happening here.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
But on this canoe trip, their names are engraved on the sword. So now I think we have 21 names of not only fathers but sons. And there's a moment when we're camping late at night at the fire where we have these boys say an oath of responsibility as they move into this new journey through their teenage years. And my boys have clear memories of those moments.
I also think it just not necessarily the rites of passage, but the entire thing, it gives you consistency in language around what that is, where,
Yes.
you can have coaching moments with your kids. It's, we need to accept responsibility, or we need to lead courageously. If we have that, language, I think you say it enough times, some of it might stick.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, and our lives they're marked with threshold moments. I mean, you think about when you get married, you pretty much have a rite of passage. You have a wedding ceremony.
Well,
When you graduate high school,
yep.
right? But so we do these things in our culture, but we don't necessarily have these ceremonies for journeys through stages of life, like a boy moving into his teenage years, moving into his adult years.
Yeah. I was reflecting over this, like leading up, and I'm thinking about like what rites of passage did I experience as a kid? I think the most significant one that most of us culturally experience is high school graduation.
Yeah.
It's a ceremony. There's the regalia worn. There's this process where the public, the government actually says you're now an adult. We're not going to tell you what to do with your time. You don't have to be here. You're not going to get in trouble for not being go.
You did the work.
Become a productive member of society. That's kind of this commissioning. I don't. That's to me the greatest one. But I was also thinking about traditional, in traditional church history, Christianity, there are 4 rites of passage. So to you have baptism. Confirmation, the puberty, you have marriage, and then you have last rites, death, right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about this a lot. We will experience rites of passage in life, and at different times, I think in culture we've tried to commemorate those intentionally, but regardless, I would say even as dads, there's a rite of passage of your first child, or whatever. And there's just things you have to experience. But I love that the intentionality behind we're choosing to mark, we're choosing to identify, to grab some common language here, and then to mark the journey of our sons in becoming men. It's really powerful. Yeah.
And I would there are other cultures that do these. The bar mitzvahs or quinceañeras or things like that. There are other cultures. I just don't know if that we necessarily, I'm going to speak for myself. I didn't have any of those tools, growing up doing that. And
well, I grew up in church and had some of these little kind of more of those traditional rites of passages, but that's what was influencing my question to you about your sons who have looking back. When I look back on my childhood, I don't look at my baptism experience as a rite of passage necessarily, or with the fondness that maybe some of these boys will when they're thinking about the day they had their name engraved in the sword and took an oath amongst, in front of their dad. And I took an oath in baptism, and it's special. Right, but it almost feels like a lost opportunity, a missed opportunity in some ways, for us to point back to and to recognize consistently throughout my journey of here's the significance of that moment, and let's leverage that for where you're going and who you're becoming. I think we just miss out on some of these. So I love what I'm hearing about this experience you guys are working through is not only is there such intentionality and the language and the journey, but also in the reflection about these things, that these are going to be markers. We're going to remind you of this stuff. That to me is, just really, really cool, powerful.
Yeah. I think one of I've had the opportunity of watching my boys go through pretty much a majority of this journey. We have some rites of passage passages that they haven't experienced yet when they graduate college, trade school, something like that. Like they figure out what their profession is, and then when they get married, when they're self-sustaining, when I'm not paying for anything. But there's this significant moment when they graduate high school. All of the dads will take this one son out to a real fancy dinner, and a few things happen at this dinner. The dads will give this son a piece of advice about entering college. And at this time, hopefully this boy has spent quite a bit of time with some of these dads. We also give the boys at this dinner an opportunity to ask any questions. No question is off limits. You can ask us anything about college, and we won't hold back. And then at the end of the dinner, the father of the son invites the son into the brotherhood of men. Like, you're no longer a son at the table. You are now, you are now one of us. You have a seat at the table, and we will now treat you like a man. Yeah. And so, and there's this, like, that was very significant to my two boys. Yeah. And they, like, and again, that moment would not have been as powerful if it was just me taking Caleb out to dinner, and I could have said all of the exact same things. Right. And sure, it would have been significant. I think we as men should do those things. But what made that event even more significant was that he was surrounded by other men that were acknowledging this moment with us. Yeah. That were nodding, that were in agreement, like, you are now one of us. Yeah. And we spent all this time with you.
I also think it's interesting. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes, especially growing up, it's hard to think of your parents as anything other than your parents, right? Like, it's hard to think of them as a man, right? I mean, it's my dad, right? And so I think when there are other men like that around that can bring that perspective as well, where it's more than just my dad doing this, but it's, to what you were saying, a man. Yeah.
That's good. And those are markers that I think those boys will never forget. Yeah. And we've provided clarity on what it looks like to be a man, because there's a lot of confusion in our world today.
You've provided clarity. I think you've also set an example for them of the types of friendships and like, I can imagine these guys you're friends with these guys too. Yeah. Like that there are significant relationships that now you carry with these other fathers. Yeah. You've modeled to them, what does it look like to live with close relationships with intentionality, so that down the road when they're married with kids, what kind of relationships are they trying to cultivate? Yeah. What are they trying to create for their families? That to me is pretty cool too.
And
significant.
What I love about this group too is it's
diverse.
It's very these dads are very different. We aren't necessarily, we don't all go to the same church. Mm-hmm. We have some different beliefs in how we should educate our children. We have a common idea of what it looks like to raise our boys. But what's great is I don't have to worry that I have to have all the answers for my boys or be gifted at everything that they might be interested in. I have a group of guys that they can start to, like, look at, ask questions about regarding their gifting. Yeah. That it's like, hey, Adam has some very different strengths than mine. And my boys now, as they build trust with Adam, can have conversations with Adam about, like, Caleb is at Texas Tech getting a business finance degree. Adam knows a little bit about finance. I know very little about finance. Caleb now has another man in his corner that he can have conversations with on this journey to getting his business finance degree. Yep. That I may or may not have been able to answer well. Yeah. And that makes my job as a parent a whole lot easier. And I'm excited to have these men support me in this process.
I also think, to what you were saying, I mean, even just on the trips or when we're getting together and playing kickball, I mean, they see how we interact with one another and how we can be respectful of one another, but also joke around with them and, have fun and all that kind of stuff too. And just seeing that type of interaction.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm a girl dad. All right. So I've got 2 little girls at home, no sons maybe there's a son coming down the road. I don't know. But right now, just little girls. So I'm curious to hear, for the other dads listening, that they may not have, well, maybe there's 2 questions here. One, I can see dads walking away from this thinking, like, how do I go create an experience like this? So I want to talk about that in a moment too. Like, what encouragement, resources, would you want to tell to a dad who wants to experiment with something similar that you guys are dabbling in and figuring out, or have created? But in the meantime, like, what would you say to the girl dads who, they're not confronted with, how do I raise a modern day knight or a man today? But I could see that the father to a girl, young woman, is also going to be asking the same questions. When does a girl become a woman, and how do I help her in this? How do I lead her in this process too?
I have 2 sons, no daughters. I have to be completely frank, I have no idea the actual markings or when we have our tenets and we have our pillars and things like that. I mean, we had a resource that we used for that, but we are also men, so that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I guess where the one thing that I would point to is surrounding yourself with other men that are working towards the same goal, that have at least some sort of common idea of what that looks like. The details of it, I don't know. That's beyond me. I don't have that. I've never thought about that because I've never had to. But I do think that can be, in and of itself, just surrounding yourself with people that are looking to do the same thing can be a big thing. So that's my...
And I think whether you're a boy or a girl, all of our children are searching for meaning and identity.
Yeah, totally.
And they're going to find it from somewhere. And I think it's our job as parents to help point them in the right direction.
And the reason I'm asking is, there is so much confusion around identity right now. Yeah. And that is probably one of my core fears, I think, for my girls is just imagining the confusion around them and the influences that will be present in their lives around their around who people say they are.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to prepare for now, and so I think that's probably part of why I have so much energy around and curiosity around what you guys are doing, because I want to do this well with my kids.
And I think the most important voice in a young girl's life is the voice of her father's. I really believe that. And I think a daughter is asking the question over and over and over again, does my dad see me? And does he love me? And what does my dad think of me? And so I think as a father to 2 little girls, how are you at helping your kids understand their meaning and what identity is? And also at the same time, I think you are helping clarify to your girls the kind of men that they might want to pursue.
Sure.
Or not pursue.
Yeah.
And so I think you have the opportunity to show your girls what it looks like to be a man, in the way you love your wife, in the way you sacrifice for her, in the way you protect your family, in the way you honor your wife, empower her, the things that you do, and your daughters are watching that. And their definition of manhood as well will come from you more than anyone else. And so that, I think, is a significant opportunity for you. And then as a father, there are moments that my daughter has gone through that I've tried to create markers for.
Well, I was going to say, 1 daughter, 5 boys, does she feel left out? In this, there's all of this planning and intentionality around for the boys.
Yeah.
And then I'm over here.
My wife has done some significant things for Kaylee. Yeah. And I, at the same time, try to do some significant things with Kaylee that are very different from what I did with the boys. And I've, when my daughter has transitioned through certain stages, I've done things I've bought her flowers and written her a letter, taken her out for dates. There are things that I will do to show her what I think it looks like to be a man and to recognize those significant moments in her journey to womanhood. Yeah. And I think it would be, to Adam's point, a great idea to find a group of men who also have daughters, who you can think through what does this look like together. Because I'll be honest, when we first started this, we stumbled our way through it. You should have seen us on our very first canoe trip. We had so much stuff. I thought all of our canoes were going to sink. Yeah. But we didn't know what we were necessarily doing. We had some resources that we discovered and people recommended to us, but we've we did something to start figuring this out. And
Yeah.
I think we just need to act
Yeah.
and take a little bit of intentionality as men to kind of figure this out.
And then to stick with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't think our kids, our daughters or our sons are asking us to be perfect. They don't need us to be perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would also encourage people, if they are listening to this and like, well, I don't have that, I don't know how to do all that, that's a lot. I mean, just start with intentionality of having conversations with your kids and talking through them. I mean, think about all the distractions there are. I think you were talking about, you were at 4 a.m, you were looking at Facebook. Think about social media and how much that could distract and tell. That could be the voice of where they're pulling their identity from, and how scary is that?
Totally.
Right? And so give them handles to hold on to, or they can come back to when they get distracted or when they have things that are maybe speaking the wrong things into their life. So I think just half of it's the intentionality behind it. And again, it's not going to be perfect, so don't have it, don't say I'm not going to do it because I can't do it perfectly. Just do something, and be intentional.
That's part of like one of the core pillars you guys are defining is like take responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think for the guys listening, like ask ourselves, like me, I'm trying to, what does it look like for me to take responsibility for my girls in this way? Yeah, for teaching them who they are, for leading them, guiding them, giving them the handles to hold on to when they are confronted with people think I should be or act or do, say, whatever. Yeah. So it's good. Any other resources or tips you would give to guys that are,
I think,
being challenged by this or encouraged by it, inspired?
Man, I think there are 3 books that I've read or that I've heard about that are really good. Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis is the book that we kind of started.
That inspired all of this.
Correctors.
Yep.
Mark Batterson wrote a book called Play the Man, and he talks about rites of passage in that book that he's taken his own sons through, and it's a newer book. And then a brand new book that just came out, I think in the last year or so, is called The Intentional Father by John Tyson. It's also another great book to read. And quite frankly, like, if men just have questions, want to meet, like I would love to meet with men to talk about what does this look like starting something like this for them. Helping them get it started. So they can email me, shane.norcross@mpaustin.com. I'd love to help them with that.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage, when you're reading these books, there's probably going to be aspects of the book that you don't necessarily 100% agree with.
Contextualize.
That doesn't mean you dismiss the entire thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think, me personally reading Raising a Modern Day Knight, there were a couple of things in there. I was just like, this isn't necessarily 100% what I believe in. But that doesn't mean I have to throw away everything from that. And, I think there was much more that I agreed with than I didn't. But I would just encourage people a lot of times when they're looking for something that they don't agree with, so then they don't have to read the book or listen to the rest of the book or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you, read it, take what you can.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And I want to reiterate what you said, Shane, that for guys who are listening and they're curious, they have questions, to reach out. And you can do that to Shane@mpaustin.com. You can also email us anytime here at the podcast. It's the Upshot at mpaustin.com.
I couldn't remember our email address.
It is the Upshot
at mpaustin.com. If it's not, it will be shortly.
And I want to say that because like if you guys, regardless of like if you're listening, like regardless if it's about the initiation or the rites of passage or becoming a man or just anything that we've talked about in any of these episodes, like we want to hear from you. Somebody besides somebody trying to sell me something around podcasting would be cool to get through that email address.
100%.
So, man, anything else as we wrap up, guys?
Just really glad Adam joined us.
I am too, man. This has been fun.
Yeah.
It's been cool. Again, I had high hopes coming into this conversation. Like this could be the highlight of, the last few weeks, and it's been good, man.
Yeah.
So thank you guys both for being here, and What?
One thing we always do at the end of our
Oh, yeah,
podcast. What
yeah.
was your one takeaway from today's podcast? You got to be thinking about this, Adam. What's the one takeaway from today's podcast? And I'll go first while you guys.
Sure.
I was reminded again early on in this podcast why it's really important never to have your children sleep in your bed.
Dude,
Vomit in beds are not a good
we
combination.
broke a rule and we're paying for it.
No, I think every guy's different. There's nothing wrong with having your kids in your bed.
I'm
just
saying we
not
broke
my
one of
rule.
our rules. Yeah, not. I don't. You make your own rules. This is not a normal
a
thing, and we
natural
paid for it.
consequence.
It's
Yeah.
a natural consequence.
Yeah.
That's
Just
right.
thank you for reminding me that we
Yeah.
don't. There's a reason why we don't let our kids sleep in our bed.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm walking away today of like just a challenge of like, yeah, how do I pursue clarity for my girls and raising them in their identity? So I'm just excited about that. I'm excited about the journey that's going to take me on, and I don't know, to be continued. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
Where I land up there.
I'm excited to hear how it goes.
Sure.
Watch you on this journey. Kyle, I think up to this point you've done a pretty good job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it's like to raise a girl.
Or
You can borrow one for a weekend and like.
Oh,
just
so and then you
experience
borrow
it.
the boys, and then I bet we'll both be begging for the other ones back after that. It's like I
That
don't
could
know
happen, man.
I don't know what I'm doing. Actually, I don't know. Maybe not. I'll just be like, it's so quiet. It's
maybe
so quiet in here."
maybe God will bless you with a girl one day.
Could be. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah. You never know.
You never know.
All right.
One thing we're really good at, Kyle, is wrapping up a podcast.
Saying bye.
Yep. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Yep.
We're always grateful to have you.
Until next time.
Until next time. Bye. Dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Upshot. Wherever you are, Kyle and I hope you got something out of it. Know that you're not alone in this journey called fatherhood. And we want to encourage you to hit that like button, subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on The Upshot. La 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 la. It's how I practice. La.